Hi, I'm Natalie Bennett, former leader of the Green Party of England and Wales, and I've been campaigning for a ban on driven grouse shooting for a couple of years now. Ever since I was brought to a space like this and was told how this is not the beautiful, wild, natural environment that you might think, but is indeed an industrial landscape managed for the purpose of breeding one species, red grouse, that will be hatched in the spring and shot at great expense in the autumn. This is a film about the impact of that driven grouse shooting industry. Please watch it and find out more.
We're on a particular piece of moorland that used to be very good in the 1990s for both hen harrier and peregrine. You had both nesting at the same time. You could come along here on the evening and you could find 3 hen harrier nests along this banking, but they've all disappeared. They disappeared long before the peregrine disappeared. And the methods that they were using in those days to get rid of the hen harrier and peregrine, they were actually squashing the eggs in the nest or stamping on the hen harrier chicks in the nest or pulling the heads off. When they'd stamped on the hen harrier chicks, we found 2 nests in one day that had been attacked that way. The gamekeepers had stamped on the chicks. They'd actually pulled the heads off, left them in the nest as a message.
Why are shooting estates so intensively managed?
Well, the whole business of driven grouse shooting depends on shooting lots of birds. So you want lots of red grouse. People pay to shoot lots, and they'll pay more if they shoot lots and lots. So the densities of red grouse are between 10 and 100 times natural levels, so that people will pay lots of money. You pay about £75 for each bird that you shoot. You don't even get to keep it for that. And you could shoot 100 birds in a day. So that would be £7,500. So you want lots of birds because you're making money out of it.
What do the estates do to artificially raise the red grouse population?
Well, when you look at a grouse moor, it's covered in heather, and you have to think of it as a kind of grouse farm. They're not bred in captivity, they're wild birds, but everything is made right for the red grouse. So the habitat is manufactured through burning and drainage, so there's lots of heather, which is what the red grouse eats, and some of it is young heather, which tastes yummy if you're a red grouse. Some of it is older heather, which is good for nesting in and sheltering in. As far as possible, all the natural predators, foxes, stoats, weasels, crows that might eat red grouse, they're killed legally by gamekeepers. They're shot or trapped.
And another site beyond in the next valley in 1998, where we had permission to ring 4 peregrines on the ground, but the keeper had to come with us. So we went. He said he didn't know about this nest. He never knew it was here. He watched us ring them, came away, and we thought, we'll go back 2 days later and check the nest. 2 days later we went back, all the peregrines had gone, completely gone from the nest, and the adult birds were nowhere to be seen.
The industry suggests that although they acknowledge that some persecution of raptors goes on, that this can be attributed to a small number of rogue estates, that it's not characteristic of the industry. Do you find that explanation convincing?
No, I mean, the figures that we've got show that a bird called the hen harrier, which is one of the ones, the birds of prey that eat grouse, and so it's killed illegally on grouse moors, there ought to be about 2,600 pairs of hen harriers nesting in the uplands of Britain. Well, they're between 600 and 800 pairs, so there are 2,000 pairs missing. So it's not just here or there, and they're missing from large parts of the country, from the east of Scotland, from most of southern Scotland, and more or less from the whole of the north of England. We get the same picture with golden eagles in Scotland. They're missing from large parts of Scotland, the places where driven grouse shooting is common. And peregrine falcons have incredibly bad nesting success all over the north of England when they nest near grouse moors. So it's something pretty widespread, and it has a big impact on the population levels and ranges of a whole load of protected wildlife.
The old gamekeepers were old school, very much old school, with the +4s, and they were in the 50s and 60s. Make no mistake about it, they were still killing raptors, but they were lazy. They weren't fit. They didn't run over the moors looking for Harriers or Peregrines, and they didn't walk very far. And don't forget, in those days, they didn't have any quad bikes, and they hardly had a Land Rover. So if they wanted to go anywhere, they had to walk. Well, they did the least they could. And as a consequence of that, in 1974, we found 39 hen harrier nests all occupied throughout Bowland. Now, that sort of strategy...
Today there's none.
Well, there's none. This year there's none. But that changed towards the late 1980s. The Duke of Westminster came along on the scene after the Earl of Sefton had died. He purchased the estate, and that man was going to run it effectively. So what he did, he got rid of all the old school, all them went, and he brought in the new people, a lot younger than us, and they could walk, and they were made to walk. And I've even said online that they really managed that estate differently and more professionally. But as a consequence, they got rid of all the raptors. That was the first thing to go. And there were 12 pairs of harriers nesting on the Duke's land when he took over. Within 3 years, there were none. And today there are none. And there are no peregrines either. 7 pairs of peregrines are no longer there.
What do you make of the industry's claims for the conservation of their value of their management practices?
Well, there's something in it. So whenever you impose one type of management on a habitat, there'll be some species that benefit and some species that don't benefit. So clearly the one that's meant to benefit from all this management is the red grouse. That's the target species. But there are some other ground nesting birds like golden plover and curlew, which are quite widespread species, but you know, they're important to us. They benefit as well.
The industry likes to present gamekeepers as sort of dewy-eyed stewards of nature.
Yeah.
Is that your experience?
Certainly not. They like to portray that, oh, we're protecting the curlews and the golden plovers, the lapwings, etc., etc. They never mention birds of prey, never.
What other impacts do the management of grouse moors have that we should be concerned about?
Yeah, well, these have become more obvious in the last 10 years, really, because this used to be an argument between people who like birds of prey and people who wanted to shoot lots of grouse. But we now know that the burning and drainage of the uplands, the management too, which is just for a hobby so that people can shoot lots of red grouse, impacts on, it's a terrible jargon phrase, but ecosystem services. So those red grouse moors produce more greenhouse gas emissions, which is bad news. The water that flows off them needs more treatment because it's got more little bits of peat and soil and it's changed chemically. So water companies have to treat the water that flows off grouse moors more before it goes into your cup of tea. And they don't do that for free, and they don't charge the people who've created that problem. It's the consumer who pays. And then there's flood risk as well. Ask the people in Hebden Bridge who, in the Calder Valley, who have been flooded several times, 3 times in the last 5 years, and they would blame the intensive management of grouse moors above their town. And there's quite a lot of science that suggests that they are probably right.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, which people might find abhorrent and unacceptable, along here there was a sign we found on the side of the road which had been attached to a fence leading onto the moor, and it said quite plainly, raptor-free zone. Well, that's true today, because the Forest of Bowland has become a virtual raptor-free zone. I mean, for instance, this year there are no hen harriers nesting in the Forest of Bowland at all, and only 2 pairs of peregrine falcons. The short-eared owl is disappearing quickly because they do take the odd grouse. But yeah, it's regarded by most of the keepers as a raptor-free zone, and they've made it plain that they don't want any raptors here. Very, very sad. The wood here which I'll point out. There's a little quarry in there. About 10 years ago, a raven nested in the back of the wood, and it had 2 chicks, and we came to the site when the chicks should have been flying, the ravens should have been flying, and the chicks were on the floor with the heads cut off.
What do you make of the extent to which we subsidise this activity?
Yeah, it's pretty odd, isn't it? I mean, that a load of people walking around in central London who've never heard of or seen a hen harrier, or never probably heard of or seen a red grouse, their taxes are contributing to this hobby for people to shoot red grouse for fun, and they're picking up the bill through higher home insurance as well. So this is something that we are all paying for through agricultural subsidies and through the effects on our pockets. There's quite a big issue of fairness here, that there are a few people benefiting and an awful lot of other people who are losing a little bit, but because there are a lot of them, that adds up to quite a lot of money.
Now, if you go into Bowland today, up every watercourse, every peregrine site that we've ever known, it's got these traps all the way around them. This is what we're up against. Trap 5 feet from an established peregrine site, and it's been keeping it off. This is the 3rd year they've done this. If I was standing here next to this crow trap and that peregrine nest was occupied and I had my binoculars round here, I would be prosecuted for disturbing a peregrine nest. So why, when someone comes to monitor this crow trap, why are they not prosecuted? Why is this crow trap here? It's obviously here to deter peregrines nesting there.
The industry talks a lot about the economic benefits of driven grouse shooting, but you don't think that a ban on driven grouse shooting would be, you know, the economic disaster for the rural economy that they suggest. I mean, why do you take that view?
Well, first of all, because the industry's estimates are overestimates and have been criticised by many economists. So it's only tens of millions of pounds that the grouse shooting industry would claim. And it's fewer tens of millions if you look at it properly. And some of it is our money that our taxes have gone into. And the grouse industry, they don't take into account floods, increased water costs and all those things. But even if you forget all that, this is a hobby for rich people. Rich people are not going to stop spending their money if they can't shoot red grouse up in the hills. They'll spend their money on other things. So that money may transfer to other sectors of the economy. It may be more, that money may not be spent in Weardale or somewhere like that, but it's going to be spent. So the Chancellor of the Exchequer is never going to be bothered about the amount of money that goes into grouse shooting. But we could do so much better with our uplands. They could be opened up to more people. The tourism industry could thrive if these areas were more welcoming. You could have wildlife tourism. There are all sorts of ways that we could use the uplands, apart from better carbon storage, flood relief, cleaner water. We could open these places up. Many of them are national parks. We ought to be using them more. They ought to be places that people go and enjoy and spend their money, rather than a few people who go there shooting spending their money.
What I want you to see, and it's a surprise to me now, there used to be a peregrine site on the ground up there where the heather's been burnt, and the peregrine will never come back. You can see the white stick. That's where they put a grit trap. They have to visit those every week. So this is what they're doing. They're burning the peregrine sites to make sure that they never come back. It's all legal because the peregrines aren't here when they do it, but it's certainly not ethical.
You thought long and hard about whether to argue for an outright ban on driven grouse shooting. Why did you hesitate for so long, and why did you finally come to the conclusion that a ban was necessary?
Yeah, I'm not sure why I hesitated. It seems kind of obvious now, but I think it's probably because I'm British, and we British, we like a compromise. We always think, oh well, it would be nicer, it would be fairer if we found some middle way. But there are two reasons why there isn't a middle way here, not one that works. One is that we're dealing with biology, and you can't compromise on the biology. So you can't have birds of prey protected and left alone so that they're not killed illegally, and driven grouse shooting. You have to choose, and I would choose the law and birds of prey over a rather pointless and ecologically damaging hobby. You can't have driven grouse shooting without these consequences like increased flood risk, higher water costs, increased greenhouse gas emissions. So you can't compromise, you have to choose one or the other. But the other reason, apart from biology, is that the grouse shooters don't appear to want to compromise at all. I think they sussed out the biology a long time ago and decided that compromise wasn't for them. So I think we'd be better off without them. And now it seems slightly odd to me that I spent quite a while wondering about it, because we would be better off without driven grouse shooting.
On the other side of the valley, all that range of grouse moor belongs to the Duke of Westminster, to the Abbeystead estate. And about 25 years ago there was a beautiful little crag. It was no more than 15 or 20 foot high, and there was a ledge near the top, and it had a heather covering. Been there hundreds of years, and a peregrine decided to build its nest on there, and it laid 4 eggs. So what did the estate do? They put a trap alongside the nesting ledge. We reported it to the wildlife crime officer. She came up, had a word with the estate. They took the trap away, but then they would come up and have the lunch next to the nesting ledge until the bird deserted. The following year, the estate put a notice in the British Mountaineering Climbing magazine that the crag was open for climbing. It was only 20 feet high. So obviously they wanted climbers to come to make sure the peregrine didn't return.
Is the grouse shooting industry, really an equivalent to the tobacco industry? You know, trying to bury all the evidence and just carry on making money regardless, or is it slightly more nuanced than that?
I think they've used some dirty tactics and some bad arguments, and but no, I don't look at them like the tobacco industry. I've met quite a lot of gamekeepers. I've met quite a lot of grouse moor owners, and I quite like quite a lot of them. And part of this, they see what they're doing as a traditional part of country living. Now, you know, it was traditional to stick kids up chimneys to clean them, so I'm not too hung up on the traditional bit, but they see it as a way of life. Gamekeepers are often the sons of gamekeepers and grandsons of gamekeepers. They see it very much as their family, their job, and that they're under attack. And I think the gamekeepers quite often don't really believe some of the stuff that people like me say. They don't believe it. I think I'm right, but they don't believe it. I think the moorland owners are more canny and more motivated by money, because there is a lot of money in running a grouse moor, some grouse moors. And I mean, to be fair, nobody likes being told that they shouldn't be doing something that they enjoy and that they and their families have been doing for years. It's quite difficult to be told that what you're doing is antisocial and bad for the rest of us. But that is what I think.
So you've now learnt about driven grouse shooting and its impact on our uplands, its impacts on our communities, its impacts on Britain. If you'd like to find out more, if you'd like to get involved in the campaign for a different kind of management of our uplands. Then August 6th is Hen Harrier Day, commemorating this wonderful, majestic bird and the way in which it's being threatened by the management of grouse moors. I'll be in the Forest of Bowland on August 6th. I'll be at an event in Sheffield on August 5. But do have a look on the internet, find out where there's an event near you, go along, and please get involved in this crucial issue for our wildlife, for our communities.